What's up, guys? My name is Lirish, and today we are going to be covering the One Piece fan letter that recently came out and received critical acclaim, at least as far as I could tell. We're going to be discussing what this fan letter is in essence, why it exists, why it is good, and why it adds to One Piece, and ultimately why I liked it as well. Gonna jump right into the video, guys, so let's get going. To start, I think that the fan letter is good because it is the inversion of the grandiosity presented within One Piece, in the sense that it is a illumination onto the existence of the mundane within One Piece. Throughout One Piece, we are to see how big it is. We see how big it is. We see the islands. We see the possibilities. We see the people. We see the edifices. We see the infrastructures. We see the rules. But we never really get to any point where we see how minute the world could be. We never see a perspective from the civilian side, from a Navy Admiral side, besides maybe Kobe. And I think that's what the fan letter does so well. It humanizes One Piece to a extent in which we can absolutely recognize that the people within One Piece, yes, they are grand concepts, but also they're just people. These people we see, Luffy, Nami, Zoro, Sanji, they are just people. The places they visit, they are just places. These are places that humans built, humans once lived in. And I think that this is really valuable to the thematic execution and exploration of One Piece, because the world is all about just how big it is within One Piece. But at the same time, it could be very small and it could be very harmonious, and there isn't a lot going on. So this juxtaposition between how big the world is and how small the world is something that I believe the fan letter sheds light on really, really well. And I just want to add on to this concept just a little more by talking about the framing of the mundanity. You know, something that was explored prior, but I want to add a little bit on more. So I think the way it's framed is very, very interesting. If you guys remember watching the fan letter, you'd see that this fangirl, she almost goes through an odyssey, mate. And she's literally just a little girl that is trying to give a fan letter to her favorite pirate, one that she feels particular affinity to because she sees herself in her. But the way it's framed, she's going here, she's going there. She's crawling under tables. She's mounting on top of infrastructures. She is all over the place. She's pushed to the roadside by the Navy officer. I think this is just fascinating construction because we see how massive the world is once again, but through a human perspective. Usually we see the winners, the losers, blah, 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 between the antagonist and the protagonist. But to see the between the lines through a civilian perspective, through an average perspective, I just think it is really, really empowering to the series themes. Moving on to the Navy officer, it's the exact same thing, right? We see this individual not partake directly in the conflicts of Marineford. Rather, we see him sort of pace off to the side, watch the action. You know, his brother's hurt. He can't help him. He's not strong enough. It's a massive thing that is on his brother's leg. The way that it is framed is very, very interesting and very, very humanizing. This dude isn't here or there, but he's in the middle. He's watching it happen. So once again, really, really empowering to the series themes. And once again, it humanizes these characters in One Piece as just regular humans. These people, Luffy, Nami, they are absolutely talented and gifted. But ultimately, at their core, it's just a regular human that strive to be great. So it's really interesting stuff. And it sheds a light on the people within One Piece that aren't necessarily in pursuit of a larger-than-life endeavor, but still struggle to their day-to-days and still have value in that endeavor. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the two major perspectives that make this fan letter the fan letter and ultimately make it valuable. So let's move on right ahead. The first perspective we're going to explore is the Navy officer. The case of the Navy officer is interesting because it is the first real insight we get into any average Navy officer's mental, besides maybe Kobe, as aforementioned. It's a grueling look into the day-to-day agonies that transpire within these officers' lives. Whether it be an inferiority complex towards our older brothers, our broad shoulders in which these guns slip off of almost as if it's by nature's design, or the daily subtle clumsiness pervading within our lives, this is just a perspective that remains valuable throughout because it adds a dimension that was hardly there before. Once again, we never see Navy officers this humanized before. They really are just people. And for that to be shown with this degree of emotion just adds a lot to the series, to be completely honest. I think another thing to point out specifically within this arc, this segment, is the enormity of the scene and how the acts of piracy trickle down into day-to-day life. If you guys remember, there was this scene where Orr's leg falls and goes onto the Navy officer's brother's leg and he's unable to move it. Yes, this is just the cause and effect and this is basic causality, but at the same time, you gotta ask yourself why this is happening. This is happening because two larger-than-life, extremely powerful pirates are fighting, and one of the pirate's legs got chopped down and it hit the person. And this is really good thematics because it shows how the world of piracy and all that it entails, it really does have a genuine effect onto real life society and the regular people. And there are a lot of other indications as well. You know, these people in the bars talking about the effect of piracy, the people talking about whether the Straw Hats are dead or alive. It really is fascinating, and there's so many different examples, but ultimately this theme, this particular event, the leg falling down, is just a testimony to the divide between the extraordinary and the ordinary within One Piece and how the former greatly affects the latter. Ultimately, the conclusive scene is a grand pirate battle in which the Navy officer acknowledges that every little thing that he goes through is something that informs his life, and is something that expands the horizons of the world known to him. He ponders if he can blaze brilliantly like Luffy, as we saw. He said, I want to be like this guy, and is grateful that even though Luffy lost his brother, in his act of passion and bravery, he was still able to save the Navy officer's brother's life. This is a memento to piracy and courage, and expounds on the butterfly effect that is One Piece. Through happy times and sad times alike, the world is still ever transformative, and the capacity to become a renewed individual, as well as an individual that is appreciative of his life, continues to grow day by day. Now we're going to be moving on to the second massive perspective within this episode, which was the fangirl perspective. The perspective of the fangirl is very interesting because the girl effectively characterizes as what the Navy officer characterizes, but she's basically a more extreme version of him. She is flimsy, clumsy, terrified, supremely vulnerable, and is ultimately somebody that is an ideal victim within the One Piece world. Basically really representing the antithesis to what strength and power represents in the series. This girl desires to give a fan letter to Nami, as she claims that she has cracked the code of what 3D scratch 2Y means, and so she is trying to give a fan letter to Nami, showing her appreciation to Nami as a pirate. First of all, I want to talk about this. Why Nami? Why not Luffy? I think this is fascinating thematically. It was specifically Nami because though she is weak, and though she is nothing compared to the spectrum of piracy strength within One Piece, she is somebody that still decided to set sail and follow her dreams. And to little girls like this one here, it is something that means a lot to her because she is someone that is identifiable to her, even if she doesn't represent the traditional ideal for strength. So really good stuff there. And basically every time, to continue on with the narrative, every time she's trying to give the fan letter, try and proceed in that endeavor, she is running across this Navy officer that is using physical force, what an asshole, to suppress her and to try and show strength to her, where she's like, I'm gonna catch the pirates and I'll show you your place, you're just a pebble on the roadside. So very interesting thematics here as well, because it's like a blockade. But ultimately, I think that the goofiness and the animations and the expressions, everything that was so funky and clunky in this episode initially, it honestly works really well because it is One Piece. One Piece is a series that has a very loose tone. It isn't really that serious, let's say something like an Attack on Titan or a Berserk, so you could work with that. So ultimately, this girl isn't able to deliver the letter. So does that mean that it was all a waste? I think what One Piece tries to argue by the end of this segment is that it isn't necessarily all a waste. She wasn't able to deliver the letter. But why? Why didn't she deliver the letter? She didn't deliver the letter because she understood intuitively, as soon as Luffy said set sail, that what was within the letter is already within the Straw Hats. Why give Nami a letter that she already is? Do you know what I mean? So the whole thing about the Straw Hats, Luffy, Nami, all of these characters is that they represent a larger than life freedom, an aversion, a disaffinity towards shacklement, that they cannot be affected by these things. And as soon as the girl realized this, she ripped up her own fan letter, her own feelings, not because she doesn't care about her feelings anymore, but because she internalized her feelings and she doesn't need any masterful delivery of a letter, or she doesn't need anything concretized. She understands the feelings within her are genuine, just as the Straw Hats, every single Straw Hat realized that the feelings within them are genuine, and she decided not to deliver the letter because, duh, it's her. She doesn't have to. I think that the way the series framed this particular scene, it was just so empowering. You have this girl who knew that her letter wasn't gonna get delivered, and as soon as Luffy said set sail, she ripped the letter up and she realized intuitively her feelings. It's almost as if this was the average person's realization that even though we're not chasing the One Piece, even though we're not doing anything crazy, we can fight in our own way. We can find meaning within our own means. And I think that's something that is integral to One Piece, which is why I like this scene so much. It dynamized and fleshed out that perspective of freedom, hopes, dreams, and universalized it to the point where even a little girl, not strong enough to deliver a letter, was able to find her hope. And isn't that beautiful, guys? I found it really beautiful. All in all, guys, this fan letter was damn good at what it did. It was a fantastic episode that really humanized One Piece and made it more universal, not necessarily in scope, but in terms of dimension and in terms of humanization. So really good stuff. We saw two massive narratives, and I think that the synthesis of these dual narratives essentially form a grander argument on the vulnerability, the general condition, and hope that exists within One Piece to all, not just pirates, and specifically within an average individual in the series. While it is true that One Piece does operate upon strength and the basis of strength, not all strength is physical strength, which is something that One Piece argues time and time again. And ultimately, a large component of what informs strength is hope. And this episode reminds us that even normal people, despite having no devil fruit, despite having no haki, despite having no ancient lineage, despite having no plot armor, despite having no military connection, despite having no grandiose ambition, despite having nothing extraordinary about them, they still have themselves, and they still have their mundane hopes and whittling dreams that do absolutely have value. I do believe that this is the message that this fan episode is trying to express, and it did it fantastically for just 24 minutes. And ultimately, guys, we extrapolate that even though these average people aren't chasing the One Piece, they're just average people. They work 9 to 5s, they go home, they have school. Even if they weren't inspired by Roger's dying words, they do have something to live for, and consequently, they still hold within them the ethos of what One Piece represents at its core. Which brings me to the final thematic point of this video, given that this is a fan letter, surely it might be intentional. This also applies to you, the viewer, the fan, the e-civilian. That you are inspired by Luffy and his crew's journeys, that you believe that his dreams and that the One Piece is real, not because you know objectively is real. We have never seen the One Piece, we don't know what it is. Not because the author necessarily told you so, even if he did, that would be superficial. You believe in that the One Piece exists, and you've been reading One Piece or watching One Piece for a long time because you believe in Luffy and his words. You believe that the ardor and vigor that he carries himself with, that the passion that he exudes on a day-to-day, on an episode-to-episode, on a chapter-to-chapter basis is legitimate and it isn't fake. And as I always say, passion incites passion. That is the reason why you too watch One Piece, you too can laugh, you too can cry, and you too enjoy this series for so long as you have. I do believe this is a fantastic meta application of the episode, and ultimately it is the final stand of this fan letter. So ultimately, guys, I had a really good time watching this episode. It sort of invigorated some part of One Piece that maybe lay deeper down within me that I wasn't cognizant of. My favorite two scenes had to be the scene where the Navy officer was watching Luffy and wondering if he could be like him, as well as the scene where Luffy screamed "set sail." I think this episode had a lot of heart, had a lot of passion, had a lot of emotion, but at the same time, it isn't just an experience. It did add to the edifice, the philosophies of One Piece. It did add to the idea of imagination, the idea of hope, the idea of dreams, this massive construct allowing for potentiality and possibility to pervade through. So it was a fantastic episode, guys, and I'm glad I covered it. I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I broke it down. This has been Lirish. If you guys like this video, please like, share, subscribe, comment, share to people. It would help me a lot. This is my first video in a long time, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I want to make more in the future, obviously, but I'm gonna need your support for that as well. I want to be better and better as I go on as a creator, so let me know if you have any feedback. Obviously, I'm going to get a mic eventually. I actually have one, but I just haven't set it up yet, and I don't have a proper setup yet. I'm actually standing right now. So, first video, hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. Let me know what else you want me to cover, and I will see y'all next video, guys.